This is Joseph Barone, the CEO and corporate learning consultant of A Fool for Learning. In our last podcast, we had Bruce Cotting, an RLAH Realtor, discuss his top 5 hallmarks of excellent customer service. Today, we once again have Bruce, and I wanted to chat with him about another one of his hallmarks, which is to never stop learning. And in particular, how does he do it? For those of you who do not know, Bruce was originally born in Guam and came to the Silver Spring area at the age of 17. He's been a realtor for 9 years, 6 of those with RLAH. So Bruce, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Joseph. Happy to be here.
And we're very glad to have you and I've enjoyed doing the first one with you. Bruce, one of the things that you told me when we met offline to discuss about doing learning is that the way that you learn today is you learn by listening to podcasts. So my first question to you is, how long have you been listening to podcasts and when did you discover them?
I've been listening to podcasts for over a year and a half, close to 2 years, as podcasts became a medium for conveying information and knowledge. It became more and more apparent the different channels that I ascribe to as a realtor, that these were of value. And once I started digging in, as I said, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I really started finding out that there was so much out there that you could pick up, let's call it on the fly in your day-to-day doings without missing a beat, really complementing your day-to-day practices.
And I know later on we're going to talk a little bit about what your favorite podcasts are, kind of the ones that are your go-to.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you determine these were your go-to ones? Or how do you determine that maybe a new one coming down the road is one that you're going to listen to on a regular basis? In other words, Bruce, is there a method to the madness?
It is a madness indeed, and the methodology that I employ really has to do with, let's call it the cream rising to the top. In this case, Tom Ferry is one of the top podcasts I listen to. And for those of you not in real estate, he is a premier real estate coach in the industry across the nation and into Canada. So because of Tom Ferry's podcast, I was introduced to several other podcasters. Some of them, it was nice to hear what they had to say. Others were very, very intriguing, and I sought out those podcasts and listened to them. There are several that I listen to on a daily basis now.
Now, do you, in identifying possibly new ones, and again, we'll talk about the ones that you currently listen to, do you subscribe to any sort of podcast service, or do you kind of get recommendations for other people or spend some time just poking around? How do you identify the new ones that you want to listen to?
I do use Apple podcastings. I just subscribe there to the podcasters that I've come to really appreciate. And again, they're always introducing their different guests, and it's sort of backtracking to that guest's podcast and so on, taking those lateral steps. And in addition, from time to time, working with other professionals, they'll suggest someone that really provided a fresh insight or different perspective that had an impact on their daily business. And those are going to be the kinds of things that I look for to inject and continue to improve the level of service that I provide.
It's excellent. Well, thank you. And when any of these things, gone are the days where most people are sitting down reading a newspaper first thing in the morning, or not necessarily not reading a newspaper, but is there a time and a place that you listen to your podcast? I'm going to do it first thing in the morning or while walking the dog or something else. Do you have a particular time and place you do them?
I appreciate that question because thinking it through, there's not a specific time of day that I will dedicate to the podcasts. Rather, what I do is I make sure and input on a daily basis. I want to be out walking 30 to 45 minutes for a health benefit, and I supplement that with the podcasts. They go together very well. They keep me on pace, on track. My mind is working in conjunction with my heart pumping, and it's just very, very invigorating to have both of those going simultaneously. So, Joseph, that's what works best for me.
Excellent. And, it works best for actually a lot of people that I've talked to about when they listen to podcasts. Of course, the other place is in the car as they're
Yes.
driving from one place to another. And to me, it doesn't really matter where you're learning. The key is that you're learning. But as you listen to these various podcasts, whether it be Tim Ferriss's podcast or the others that we'll mention later, when you're done, let's say you're listening to a podcast and finish it, you get this great idea, this great piece of information. How do you go about sharing that information with the others here in Arla, or maybe with your family? Do you have a way of sharing that information out with everyone on a regular basis?
It's funny that you asked that, Joseph, because I figured out the hard way that if I didn't take action after listening to that podcast, let's say after a long walk, got home, if I didn't take notes, jot it down, or make record of it, then I would eventually lose that idea and it would take a while to come back. So now what I've put into practice is I'll listen to that podcast. Anything that I'm picking up that I find invaluable, worth sharing, I'm actually going to do a quick note into my phone so that when I get done at the end of it, at the end of the day, I'm just recapping everything that I've learned and gone through. And I'll put together a master list in Evernote that I use and can reference, as I have conversations either with fellow realtors or with family, by example. If there's something relevant, I can instantly click a link to that podcast and send that right out to them.
Excellent, excellent. And so for our kind of our last question for this podcast, can you tell me what are the top podcasts that you listen to on a daily basis? And again, on our next one, we'll go into much more detail on them. But what are the top ones that you listen to?
Sure. Okay. So the first one that I mentioned is Tom Ferry, and again, that's from a real estate insights and perspective.
And I apologize, I got the name wrong earlier. So to my listeners, I apologize. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I got it wrong.
Actually,
I said Tim Ferriss.
You actually got that right. So there's two guys. Easy to interchange those two. So Tom Ferry is the realtor perspective. Tim Ferriss, most people know him from his first book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and then he did The 4-Hour Chef, and he's got lots of other educational material out there, covers a lot of different life perspectives. So Tom Ferry, Tim Ferriss. Through both of them, I heard of Tom Bilyeu, and he does the Impact Theory podcast. And of course, another one that most people know is Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has basically parsed down the wealth of information he provides, and he disseminates that through the Tony Robbins podcast. I find that very, very helpful as well. For those guys, I also tracked down a gentleman by the name of Patrick Bet-David. Although not a realtor, he is an entrepreneur and in the insurance venue. His podcast is called Valuetainment, and that one, wide-ranging topics, really informative and helpful across all spectrums. The last one I would point out is Lewis Howe, his School of Greatness podcast. As you can tell sort of by the themes and the names of the individuals that I've mentioned, these are all focused not just on real estate, but it's information both for personal life and for business life, and about being the best you can be for the people that you come into contact with on a daily basis.
Well, thank you, Bruce. In our third and final podcast, Bruce will expound a little bit more upon each of those. But Bruce, I want to take a moment to say thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For being with me. And if any of our listeners want to get in contact with you, either to represent them as a buyer or seller, or even to learn a little bit more about you, how do they go about doing that?
Thank you for asking that. 3 primary channels. The first and easiest one is probably via text or call at 202-491-2494. Again, that's my cell, so you can text or call. And then the email address is bruce@rlahre.com, arlare.com.
And if you wish to learn more about A Fool for Learning or wish to contact me, you can go to my website at afoolforlearning.com. And if you wish to contact me from that site, we can talk a little bit more about various options to help you with learning in your organization. This is Joseph Barone, the CEO of A Fool for Learning, signing out. Remember, learn, perform, succeed.